A fatal accident at sea. The Pentagon releases videotape of a U.S. aircraft carrier firing on a Turkish destroyer. A new medical study shows that depression is on the rise. More people are suffering and at a younger age. And Eye on America. Tonight, AIDS education. Are American children getting too much, too soon?
Just by mixing blood, and there are other ways when you grow up, but you can't get it by kissing.
This is the CBS Evening News. Good evening, Dan Rather reporting. It was a month ago that a U.S. Navy ship fired a missile into a Turkish destroyer, killing 5 Turkish sailors. A tragic accident during NATO maneuvers. Today, a Navy court decided officially who's at fault. Correspondent Jim Stewart has the story and the pictures.
The commanding officer of the aircraft carrier Saratoga and 4 of his officers got the blame today for the mistaken missile attack, which began as a last-minute training exercise in the carrier's Combat Operations Center. All of the officers in the operations room knew this was a drill, but the problem was no one bothered to tell that to the enlisted men whose fingers were on the actual firing buttons of the ship's Sea Sparrow missiles. The Navy released this videotape that shows what happened next.
It looked like they fired a couple of missiles in the air over toward that surface contact. Need to be able to render all possible assistance in the way of picking up survivors.
3 miles away, the Sparrows struck the bridge of a Turkish destroyer dead on, killing 5 men and wounding 18. The Navy said the fault lay with the officers who called the drill.
The 2 petty officers, they're enlisted men in the Sea Sparrow mounts, asked the right question. They said, "Is this for real?" They received from the phone link where they should have received it, the orders telling them that it was for real.
The Saratoga was training in the Aegean Sea with 5 other NATO ships early on the morning of October 2nd when the accident occurred. Officers in the operations center had the ship's missiles lock on the nearby Turkish ship for practice, but never uttered the words, "This is a drill." The mistake was recognized immediately.
As the missiles left, said, "My God, why did we fire? This is an exercise." While the TAS operator, the Target Acquisition System operator, said, "I thought this was real world," and put his head down.
The Navy helped search for survivors, is looking at compensating the families, and will reprimand those responsible. But today, the Turkish government said that's not enough and wants to see the Saratoga officers court-martialed. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
U.S. Marines and other troops could soon be moving into Somalia. The United Nations began talks today on President Bush's offer to send about 20,000 U.S. military personnel to protect food shipments in the sometimes lawless African country. David Martin is covering the story at the Pentagon. David, what's the latest?
Dan, late this afternoon, the UN Security Council began debating a resolution that would basically put the U.S. military in charge of delivering food and medicine to the estimated 1.5 million Somalis in danger of starving. And the president of the Security Council says he hopes to have a vote approving that resolution as early as Thursday, Dan.
And when will the U.S. military be ready?
Well, the U.S. Central Command, which is the same command that brought you Operation Desert Storm, is right now drafting the plan for delivering the food, and that plan is scheduled to be presented to Defense Secretary Cheney on Thursday. So once the plan is approved and a resolution adopted, U.S. forces could begin moving almost at once, and U.S. combat troops could be on the ground in Somalia sometime next week, possibly even this weekend. And eventually, Dan, there's going to be somewhere between 10 and 20,000 U.S. troops in Somalia.
David, military leaders, among other things, get paid to worry. What worries them about this operation?
Well, the one thing they're really not worried about is being able to deliver the food. The warlords who've been blocking these deliveries are simply no match for a well-trained army like the United States. The hard part is not going to be occupying territory and delivering supplies. It's going to be getting out. This is being advertised as a quick in, quick out operation, but before the U.S. can withdraw, it's going to somehow have to create the conditions so that the warlords just don't go back to business as usual of looting supplies and letting hundreds of thousands of people starve to death. The UN Secretary General is talking about disarming the warlords, and that's obviously a much bigger, more dangerous operation than simply feeding the starving. Dan?
David Martin, live at the Pentagon. Thanks. CBS News correspondent Dr. Bob Arnott went to Somalia recently to report on the starvation and sickness caused by the war there. Tonight, he looks at the roots of ruin in the East African desert state.